So as we move towards the south, I'm going to make a little pit stop in the southeastern door. We call the South Apitagasiganuk, which means it's really relating to like that midday sun or that midpoint in the sky or that midpoint in the year. But before we even get there, I've always learned that the southeastern doorway, from our perspectives and from a Nehio ceremonial teaching, because those are my elders who taught me ceremony first, that the Notagwe, the old women, the old ones, sit in that southeastern door. And so I really want to take this time to just speak a little bit about the importance of intergenerational transmission. So that's receiving mentorship from elders, from other artists, teachers, community members, and how important and vital for sustainability, for growth, as an artist, as a creator, having good mentors, strong mentors, folks you can trust, you can turn to for both advice on how to create, how to complete a project, how to move through a challenge or a struggle, but also for cultural teachings and knowledge and support to help uplift the values of the work that's being created and being manifested. So I want to start with a quote from the late Mosham Bob Smoker, who is an Ojibwe elder from Kakiwishtaha Thunderbird Calling Back community in southern Saskatchewan. And I first had the opportunity of meeting Mosham Bob Smoker in Regina. He was sent to pick me up from the airport because my other relatives weren't able to come get me. And so this old dude shows up in his pickup truck, and I had just received a text from one of my other collaborators saying, "Oh, we can't get you, but don't worry, Bob Smoker's coming." And I just remember stepping outside of that Regina airport and seeing this truck in a sweetgrass braid hanging over the rearview mirror, and all I heard was this voice coming from the truck. "Are you Mo Kaufman? Are you Larry, Curly, or Mo?" And I was like, okay, I know this is the guy. And so it was like instant friendship, instant connection, and a lot of the things that I'd been questioning or, kind of hoping to receive some guidance on, while the two of us sat and ate lunch, he shared many of these things. So I really feel like Spirit put this old one in my path for a reason. And he was the person who gifted me my tewagen, this beautiful drum, after only having visited with him for a few days. But really talking about, the creation of song, of stories, his journey and my journey, and just like how quickly we were able to build a really deep relationship. And so one of the quotes that Bob always used to say whenever we would visit on the phone or in person was, "I'm going to need you as much as you're going to need me." And when he first shared that, he would also say, "Shawinimin mo, shawinimin," which is like, how do we take care of one another, And I realized over the years how important this teaching was. This is basically his way of acknowledging reciprocity. But often as young ones, it can be really easy to fall into this idea that like, I don't have the right to work with an elder, or like I'm not good enough or special enough, or they'll never choose me, or they won't want to help me, or those were some of the setbacks that I experienced. Who am I to be asking an elder for teachings? Do I have something to prove that I'm worthy of these teachings? And I really learned from so many elders, and namely Bob, that if I don't ask for the teaching or the help or the support, then that elder can't actually share their gifts with me. And so that reciprocity, that intergenerational transmission and exchange is essential for the well-being of all involved. And that it's our roles in community, those sacred roles that we've been given, Those elders, they actually used to exist in the middle of the circle because they were the ones who were there to transmit the knowledge to the younger generation while their parents were running around hunting and trapping and building things and, doing all this other work. So that to invite elders and to ask and call on those elders, take tobacco, be clear with your ask, be clear with your prayer, with your question. That is a restoring of that balance and a restoring of that sacred circle. And so I'm going to need you as much as you're going to need me. This also extends to other forms of collaboration, creative collaboration, collaboration with the land, collaboration with beyond human relatives. So those might be whatever tools you're working with. And so I just want to acknowledge, some of the elders who have made me and shaped who I am today, and some of the gifts that they've shared with me that have supported me on my path. And as I share some of these stories with you, I want to invite you to also call into your imagination, into your heart, and into your mind, who has had an impact on you in your life, who through their teachings, through their ways of being, of knowing, of relating, of joking, of teasing you, of sharing with you, of taking care of you, has helped you to find more courage, to find more capacity and more ability to continue to walk on the path you're on. And if you don't have many, who would you like to work with? And what kind of questions would you want to ask them that would help you develop who you are as an artist and a creator and as a human being? Maybe you have artists who you look to, who are other performing artists who do incredible work with songwriting and with language or with technology, or they really know how to play that guitar like you'd never believe. If you could sit down with them and ask them questions about who they are as an artist, their craft, their process, their practice, what questions would you ask them? And how would that align with your values and with what are the skills or the tools you want to bring into your bundle? So I start with Mushin Bob Smoker and this simple teaching of reciprocity and of transmission. And I move to Cheryl Rondell, who I called up actually on the phone when I had gone to a march for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two spirits in Montreal. And I'd heard the opening prayer from a Ganyanga Haga elder in language, and I was really just touched. And that was a moment for me where I was like, I really want to learn language. And so I called up Cheryl, and I first met Cheryl actually in Calgary. We were singing together for a spoken word festival hosted by Sherry D. Wilson, and I was launching my first album at this festival. And so the artistic director, Sherry D., had invited Cheryl Rondell, to perform on the same bill as me. And so we met in one of my musicians' basements, and I was singing backup vocals for her on a couple of her beautiful songs that were part of this giveaway album that she made. And so through that, we started to run into each other at different gatherings, at the Banff Center, in creative and artistic residencies. And it was through me kind of putting myself out there in these different moments that I started to build those relationships. And so some might call this networking in different realms and in different facets of understanding, like entrepreneurship from a business savvy side of things. That's what it is, but for me, I really consider it mentorship, eldership, and collaboration, because we want to make sure that those relationships continue to grow, and that how we're building those relationships, there's sustainable values that those relationships are supporting. So with Cheryl, I called her up that day and I said, I really want to learn language. I really want to learn one of my ancestral languages. So Michif would be the language, and one of the roots of Michif is Nehiawewin, which is Plains Cree. And I knew that Cheryl spoke a considerable amount of Cree. And so she said, well, Mo, if you're going to learn the language, you should learn it in ways that are true to you. And so she proposed a song creation project. And she said, but if we're going to do this, I want to introduce you to one of my language elders, teachers, go-to siblings, I guess. Joseph Natauhau was who Cheryl named, who's a Nehio elder, storyteller, and knowledge keeper. And so that's how we began this journey of connecting in and through language. And so basically that journey started with just this conversation and this moment of me wanting to learn language. But then in collaboration with Cheryl, we wrote a grant through the Canada Council for the Arts, and we developed the project that we were wanting to create. We created a title for that project, and I think we called it Back to Where My Heart Belongs, because there was a song that was originally written about Katepwa, about the Qu'Appelle Valley with that title. And we started to map, what were the different steps and who were the different collaborators we were going to want to meet with, and how are those relationships going to be formed in order to learn the language, but to learn the language through a series of songs that we were going to collaboratively write. As I mentioned in the first episode in the Eastern Door, we did ceremony when we got there, and so that was part of the process. So it was listening to the prayers as we were bringing in the ancestors, the stones, into the middle of the lodge. It was having conversations, kiukewin, which is to visit after the lodge. What did we receive? What did we see? What did we learn? What were the visions we had? Was gathering choke cherries from, some of the trees in Katepwa and the Qu'Appelle Valley. And as we gathered the berries and put down our chistemao, our tobacco, what things were coming up and through, and meeting with local elders, namely the late Noel Starblanket from Starblanket Reserve, who shared with us a lot of the teachings and the stories of that land. And so it was through those relationships and through those collaborations, eldership, mentorship, first with Cheryl and then with Joseph, that I really started to develop my practice in singing the land, in using song as a form of remembering language, and all those gifts and teachings became part of my bundle. And so I also want to speak to two spirit kokums, Elder Barbara Bruce and Charlotte Nolan, and how important and valuable it's also been in more recent time to have two spirit kokums, two spirit elders, and how much that has helped me as a two spirit tastawayak, which we call the in-between people in language. I like to refer to myself as that. Michif person, how it's helped me to really continue to come home. And so I first met Barbara and Charlotte through my friend Jo Marie Einish, Jo Mama, who I met at Sundance, at my Sundance, which was in Cree territory, James Bay. And Jo Marie had told me about this Two-Spirit Sundance that was starting up in Manitoba, just outside of Winnipeg, in the Red River Métis homelands, with two Two-Spirit Kokums. And I was like, I have to get there. I just have to find a way. So again, I applied for funding. I applied for a grant. I applied through Concordia because I was taking my master's at the time. And I was like, I need to go there. I need to get there. Nitakotan, I have arrived. And I remember we arrived late. I came with my wife, and we got to the land, and instantly Barbara Bruce, she stood up from her chair and she came walking towards us with this huge smile on her face, and like her eyes were sparkling, and she just started laughing, and she's like, "Oh, you must be Mo." And it felt similar to that first connection with Bob Smoker, where it was like instantly there was this heart connection and this place of returning. Like I was returning home. And the next morning, before the fast started, I was asked to sing a song, or maybe I proposed to sing a song. And I sang Wichahin, which is a song that Bob Smoker had originally taught me and gifted me. And as I sang this song, I watched Elder Charlotte Nolan, who's sitting next to me, beautiful trans Kokum warrior, 60s scoop warrior. I just saw tears start streaming down her eyes as I was singing. And the song is really like, please help us. Help us to continue what we're doing here. Help us to remember who we are, and help us to hold that gratitude for this life. And when I finished singing the song, Kokum Charlotte, she shared, it's been so long that we've been praying and we've been dreaming of this moment, and we've been dreaming of this land, and we've been dreaming of this wolf medicine healing place, this space for us to return to our own practices in our own ways and with our own people, the Tastawayak, Inuak, the Two-Spirit people, in safe, protected, loving, and caring ways. And it was a moment that marked me again in song, in relationship, and in returning home. And it was at that fasting camp that I received Ospwagan, my pipe. And that marked for me like a new level in terms of that initiation, of that mentorship from our indigenous ways of knowing, where I committed 100% to being the Oskapio, or as I've recently termed it, the Oskiinu, which is like the elder's helper, and Iinu means like being or person, it's non-gendered, but Oskapio comes from the young lad or man or boy. So to be an Oskiinu for these Kateayak, these Kiseiinuak, these old ones, these gentle ones with wise hearts, and that continuum of those practices of receiving the knowledge through the witnessing, through the observing, through the listening, and through the supporting of being the hands and the body that can move around and that can do the things that perhaps these old ones can't do in the same way anymore. But they share those teachings, they share that understanding through the, giving the teachings, through making the requests, through getting the ceremony done, putting the stones into the fire, pouring the water in the middle of the lodge, through doing all these different things. And it's through that mentorship that those gifts are imparted. It was really through me going and arriving that I continued to affirm my voice, locate myself within my community, but then more than ever locate myself within Two-Spirit, ceremonial, Métis, land-based ways of knowing and being. And from there, that's informed how I've then left that land and started to do workshops and create new music and songs inspired by and in response to. And those things I can now share with communities and share with other collaborators beyond that ceremonial space, but in creative kinships and collaborations. And so I share that because I think for me, the first level of mentorship is eldership. And I grew up in that way, and so I do have to acknowledge that, I received a lot of care and a lot of teachings from those elders, from my grandparents. But then how can we also look to other artists, aunties, uncles, siblings, cousins within creative realms to also learn and grow together? Because I think sometimes people think that entrepreneurship is like it's a go it alone, it's create that unique brand identity, image, individual, but it's really about connecting and collaborating, and from that place lifting up whatever that vision or that identity or that image is. But that image is a mirror and is a reflection of all those others who are part of that community and part of that circle. So I've also wanted to share a bit about some of the collaborations, like creative collaborations. I mean, those are also creative. But just being able to work with other musicians from different cultures, different backgrounds, different musical styles and genres, and how much that's also supported me in defining and in knowing and in affirming my voice as a Métis artist and musician, how important it's been to also hear differently things that maybe I wasn't able to hear in my own kind of solo practice. I do also have my looping pedals, space pedals, so some of the technology that I've worked with over the years with me here. And I want to name and acknowledge how vital these tools have been as collaborators as well, in helping me design and draft kind of templates for some of the music that I've created. Because I don't need a band and I don't need 5 musicians to, be with me in consistent rehearsals to be able to sort of create like bed tracks or like the foundations for some of the music I've created. But then moving into collaborative settings and rehearsals and preparations for larger shows, for festivals, tours, album recordings, that's really where that collaborative piece comes in. So I've been able to take recordings from, some of my personal kind of rehearsals and creation moments into those collaborative rehearsal settings and play that music, share the lyrics, share the kind of the things that I've drafted, these little kind of maps, and then allow the musicians and have the musicians with their own imaginations, their own creative practices, riff off of and respond to and with, in more improvised ways, the music that I'm proposing. Because I don't write sheet music. I wish I did. I've had others do scores for me and help arrange some of my work. So I've given them a recording of me singing and drumming, and I've had some of my songs recorded and created into orchestral pieces for the Quebec Symphony Orchestra, the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and I've also been able to collaborate with smaller ensembles of classical musicians in collaboration with powwow drummers, in collaboration with Inuit throat singers, in collaboration with Nawa musicians from northern Morocco. I will say that that's one of the benefits of living in Montreal is it's an incredibly dynamic community. And so through the work that I've done over these years and through those different collaborations I've made, I've developed like a network of people who know about the work I'm doing, who talk about the work that I've done and the collaborations, and then who start to, this is how we grow our community and how we grow our name as artists, by doing good work, by living by our values, and finding energizing, creative, and fun ways to create beautiful music. So always check in with yourself, whenever doing collaborations, whenever engaging in collaborations, what am I bringing to the table? What are the gifts that I have to share? How do I want to show up into this space? And from that place, what do I also want to learn? What do I not yet know? And how am I going to open myself up to listen and to receive in those collaborative ways? And from there, beautiful manifestations are possible. It's incredible to think about what is possible when we are open to growing and learning together. Mamawe Wichitowin, which is like to collaborate all together. Miu Wichitowin, like in a good way, we co-create and we collaborate. Also one of the teachings of those treaty elders. So how do we lift ourselves up through lifting one another up in those ways? And then eventually you'll find one day you're going to be the mentor. You're going to be the one who's teaching others and sharing those gifts and helping young ones grow, and they're going to start coming to you to be that model, to be that marker of like, how can I do this in a good way? And so that's also another layer of that process of collaboration and initiation. So with that, I want to share with Shainan because it feels like a really important song, and because I've named Bob Smoker in this episode, as well as that first moment of singing for the Two-Spirit Kokums at our first ever fasting camp in the Red River homelands. And so I want to share with Chianan, which was taught to me by Mushum Bob Smoker, who's now passed. And this is a song, it's in Ojibwe, it's in Anishinaabemowin, and it's a song of gratitude and a song like, please help me. So to humble ourselves, to never think that we know more than anyone else, but that the gifts and the teachings that we carry are just as valuable as everyone else's in the circle, and that I'm going to need you as much as you're going to need me. So these gifts of reciprocity and right relation are integral to maintaining and sustaining ourselves as creatives.